Welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Rana, and as this is our last show before Election Day, which is next Tuesday, November 5th, I, of course, have two candidates as my guests tonight, Mirna Martinez and Jason Morris. They are the two Board of Education candidates who are running on lines that are not the Democratic or Republican lines. So I think maybe the conversation might have a little bit more divergent thinking than some of the interviews you've been seeing over the last week or so. So welcome, Jason and Mirna.
Thank you for having us.
I guess you can do it whichever order you want, but why are you running?
Oh, boy. This question actually got me to shed a couple tears during the last Board of Ed debate, but I can do it now. So I graduated undergraduate without having any idea what I wanted to do with my life, and I just looking for, any old job, like a waitressing job, any old job. I saw this little ad in the paper that said for Berlitz, it's a language learning, institution, and to speak Spanish, do this. So I was like, okay, I speak Spanish, I'll apply, and I applied, and it's very formulaic. So, and there were two really interesting positions they got me in. One was at a parochial school. And when I first got there, I remember the sister saying to me, the nun saying to me, she was pretty stern with me. And I was, fresh out of college, I was young, and she said to me, and she looked at my resume, which had after-school jobs and just little jobs, and she said to me, this isn't an after-school job, I was like, I know, I don't know, I applied. and she's like, well, we'll see. And I was there with my Berlitz representative, and and I went into the class, and there was a teacher there. She was observing, and it was a scripted lesson, but as soon as I got up and was doing my, putting myself into the scripted lesson, it made sense to me. It fit. There was something about it that it wasn't just a job. It was wonderful. And the teacher actually got up and ran out of the classroom and went to the nun and said, no, don't worry, she's great. And they tried to hire me on for the next year. And anyway, so from there I ended up going to graduate school for education, and it's pretty much been, education has been my world. It's been what I do. I teach. I'm a certified teacher. I've taught in Boston and New York and here in New London at Betty Dover, at Edgerton, and I truly enjoy it. I'm energized by my students. Right now, I am a youth program coordinator at Fresh New London, and so I'm not always in direct contact right now with students, but sometimes I am, and those little moments when I am, it's completely energizing and fulfilling, and it makes sense to me, and it's empowering for me to end up watching them go through their understanding of their power. And then lastly, as far as Board of Education, when I'm working on whatever area it might be in education, they're not abstract concepts to me. To me, those, whatever it is that we're working on, there are real people that I know, that there are faces that connect and will be affected by the developments that we make in education. That's why I'm running for Board of Education.
Jason, I think you probably took a slightly different path.
I definitely did, and I don't know, it's very difficult to follow up to people like Mirna. But I started out, you could say, in the military in 2001, and I had a long career. I was on a submarine. I actually taught for 4 years. During active duty, I had to certify within the military to do that, and I received multiple IT certifications in order to bring up my wealth of knowledge and everything in order to teach the students. And we constantly have training on how to do that properly. Now I understand how that's not necessarily K through 12, but it did give me a lot of I think of a sense of what teachers feel when they're trying to connect with their students. And constantly that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to figure out what is really going to connect with the student. What's the student interested in? So every time you start his class, you go through, okay, what's your hobbies, interests, who are you, where are you from, and things like that, to help me and whoever's teaching really kind of tailor the instruction to connect with them. So in 2011, I left active duty and went to reserves, and in September of that year is when I had always felt like, you always have that quote of, somebody will do something about this, or somebody will do something about that. I was never that somebody, and I really felt like I needed to be that somebody. When the Occupy movement began, that's what got me going. I became very interested in just about every subject, every issue out in the world, economic injustice, economic inequality, civil rights, campaign finance, a lot of big issues that are affecting our entire country. Education being a big one. And in spring of last year, I said I needed to focus on just a couple, just like one or two issues, and education was my number one.
And both of you are parents.
That's right.
That's right, yeah. So I'm a founder of New London Parent Advocates, and Jason came into that group about a year ago or less, I don't know. But he's been really dedicated and amazing as far as a researcher, and dedicated to the issues. Whenever whenever an issue it strikes you, you're dedicated to do whatever it is that you need to do do what you need to do with it. So.
Well, in the spring, at least when I woke up and I was like, I really need to focus on education, so I did. I started going to every single board meeting. I started reading every single policy that the board was bringing up for discussion. I started reading state education news and research and data, and every single issue that the district was going through, I made sure I knew what I'm talking about before I go up there and give any kind of advocacy. And so just about 3 or 4 months into NLPA starting is when I was like knocking on cell phone doors, you could say, or poking and prodding, because I see these people coming to the meetings and I'm like, you come here often, are you, who are you, what's going on, are you part of this? And they're like, yeah, well, we have meetings and such, and I got to, they let me into the group, you could say, and I have been working really hard with them, because they are all amazing people, parents and community members. And it's just been, when it came to running for Board of Ed, I really didn't feel like I had a choice. I'm on the edge of my seat at every single board meeting, trying to make sure that these board members are discussing every factor that needs to be said about all these issues, and it just really doesn't seem like they are researched, that they're informed enough to make an informed decision. And I really am disappointed that it seems like they rely on the district administration for information, instead of going out and getting it themselves and bringing it forward and be like, this is what I've found. Do you have anything, to back it up or to refute it or anything like that? And I just said, I have to run. I have to bring a courageous, researched, passionate parent voice to the Board of Ed.
Now, what was the impetus for the beginning and the continuation of New London Parent Advocates?
For me, it was actually the first time I ran a little bit, noticing that in many places that, so when the first time that I ran, I immediately thought one of the things that I'd have to my advantage, having a very Hispanic population in New London, is that I speak Spanish. And during the campaign, I didn't actually find it that useful. And seeing that a lot of the Hispanic population seemed to be missing from all of that, I was concerned about it, and it was a part of the parent involvement that started me in that direction. And then, so that's where it started. It's not a Hispanic group at all. It's for parents altogether. But I mean, I think that, with it in school, we want, how much better can you do with, in a sense, convincing, enticing, engaging a student body or individual students if there's buy-in from the family, and also the power, the influence that families have in a system is, I don't think, fully understood here in town by enough of the population. So I guess that's a part of it,
Now, do you, as parents and as people who are advocates through New London Parent Advocates, do you feel that the schools and our school system are welcoming of parents and of the community?
I'd actually say it. I think if you show interest, they're like, sure, come on in. That the schools are and teachers are, and if you don't really have a hostility between the two, like already pre-made, I've always had a good experience trying to get into schools or trying to find out information. But when it comes to the administration side, when it comes to governance level, big decisions, it's very difficult to really get into the conversation because they really just want to control the conversation. And like I was saying about how the board doesn't really seem very much informed, if they can control what the board's knowledge is, then they know what the board's going to do, and then they just use intimidation with the state intervention, and with very short timing shotgunning policy on them, and you really get an ineffective board.
I would have responded probably, I wouldn't want to give a blanket no, because, and I like that you actually spoke first, because it depends on what sector of the school we're talking about when you say the schools. Sure. And so when you said teachers, definitely, I've been felt welcomed by teachers. Teachers, I mean, why wouldn't you want a hand in what you're trying to accomplish with the numbers that you're trying to accomplish? So yes, I would say with teachers, definitely. And so it's going to mean it's going to be different in each school, but I would say that I've actually not had a positive experience trying to get into the schools. And I've heard from other people too that and I'm sure plenty of people have had great experiences getting in, and that's fantastic. But there are people who don't have. I've heard they don't want us in, and I think, like you said, it depends on I think the level of your inquiring, or how they might perceive you as inquiring. I don't think that I've been inhospitable to go in, but I think perhaps they have perceived me as a bit too inquisitive about things, which is really unfortunate, because my inquisitiveness is to understand and therefore be able to help to bring us someplace, from whatever little bit that I can help out. So no, I haven't always experienced that. I know that it's on the website, I hear, right, that it's our mission or something, that to be
customer service
friendly oriented. Yeah. So, but the translation of that, I haven't always seen that.
Well, the reason I asked was when I was on the board between 2009 and 2011, the board passed by a slim majority a waiver to fees for other groups that wanted to use school facilities, like the soccer league and little league and different sports groups that run on a shoestring. we voted to waive the fees for them to use our facilities as long as there was already going to be a custodian in the building. And we were told it was going to be, I don't know, it was like a $15,000 line item that we would have to cover if we didn't charge these fees, which when you're talking about a $40 million budget, $15,000 is not much. And four of us felt that that $15,000 was leveraged many times over because of the number of students and volunteers that were coming into the schools, not to mention that the schools would be utilized, the buildings would be utilized more hours of the day. And almost the day after, the custodians' hours were shortened so that it became impractical. You know, they didn't stay naturally long enough to really help these groups. And it was kind of shocking to me that that happened. It didn't happen when I first started on the board, so I might have really been more shocked if it had happened during my first month. I had become a little cynical by then, but I really was unprepared for that to happen. And, you know, I thought it was a terrible message that, you know, the community is welcome in our schools as long as they pay.
What I've really seen is just that the state's influence on our district is really not necessarily just Adamowski. It is really imposing, and it's not, like I was saying, it's not just Dr. Adamowski. It's not just, oh, we have these laws, we have to follow them. It's really, what is the state's interests, and the superintendent is supposed to do that. Is supposed to you know, pursue those interests. He's not going to tell you very easily that you can opt out of standardized tests, because that's not what the state wants to tell you either, but it's true. He's not going to, he's not going to do anything that he doesn't feel is going to pursue those interests unless he's told to by the board with, you will use this money to do this, or this is in policy, this is what will happen. And even the board is tied sometimes where they're charged with pushing the state's interests too, but the whole purpose of a democratically elected Board of Education is if we have a dissenting opinion on exactly which direction we need to go, the board needs to make that known, needs to push that up to the state level and say, look, we disagree, we think this is a great solution instead. And that's one charge that they have, or duty, that I feel that the board has also neglected through this last term entirely. They really haven't pursued or endorsed anything worthwhile of making a change in the state life.
Now, since you kind of moved into the area of state intervention, can you tell us what is the stated purpose of the state's intervention, and maybe afterwards, if you like, talk more about what the real effect is and whether it's a match?
Well, it started with the audit that was done, where they interviewed, I believe it was 50-something community members, and they found a good amount of distrust with who was running things and how it was being done, and same people being in positions moved around from different elected positions. Also, obviously, it played into it that we are not succeeding as far as state standardized testing. And then board conduct was also something that was mentioned during the in the audit. And so that was, I guess, the precipitating factor. I do know that that the chair at the time of the board did request intervention with the superintendent. But I believe it was the audit that was the precipitating factor. But what the intention of, let's say, cleaning up the public, the way that the board presented itself to the public, it was cleaned up. But I believe that there's a lot more to that. Like Jason was saying, that the board does not have, and there have been several Board of Ed members who have said them in debates, who have said it in various places on these shows. I was on a show with Jason Catala, that the board does not seem to have the space to always act as they feel they should be doing as a democratically elected board. So that, meaning that the state does have its agenda, and in the back, the board members are being spoken to about how they're expected to vote, which I'm looking for the word to say, or I mean, I find it, gosh, I can't even find it.
Democratic, or
unjust.
local.
I find it not right. I find it despicable. I find it that if the state feels the need to intervene and have a certain agenda, then it needs to be clear and laid out to the public. But to make it appear that the board has, the power that's being given to the board, and yet being told in the back to do something different when they're in public's eye.
It was a very interesting thing to audit, because it was taken on the last board. Before,
Right.
on your board.
On my board,
But before,
which did not behave as badly as our reputation, in my opinion, but that passed.
Right.
So,
well, so it's interesting, because that, you got the audit of that board, and now we have this board. And how many members changed at that election? Do you remember?
4.
4 people.
Bill,
out of
Jason,
7.
and Barbara were the only repeaters.
Okay, so 4 new people out of a 7-person board, and apparently that means that they still have issues, even though they haven't necessarily displayed them during meetings. I never really saw a whole lot of, banter back and forth or arguing.
Now, as Board of Ed hopefuls, how do you feel is the best way to proceed in this situation?
Do you, in the situation where you're
where
being,
we have the state intervention?
I think it's really important not to be influenced by. I mean, if you happen to be, your ideas are the same as what you're being told at the same time. If that's coincidental, then that's what you need to do. But otherwise, not to be influenced, and to clearly state during those public meetings, to clearly state what your position is, and to let the public know what's going on. I do appreciate the board members who have shared how it is that they're being nudged.
And that's usually on the side. They're not going to say that in a public meeting. They're on TV.
They did.
Well,
Jason
they
was
did
on
right
the-
there. But what
yeah.
I mean, at board meetings throughout this whole process of state intervention so far, they haven't been like, hey, by the way, he's telling me to do this. They haven't said anything like that.
Actually, I remember
I've
a
seen.
meeting where Peg Curtin, I don't remember what, was it the SOP that they were voting on?
I
And
think
she
what you're
said,
saying. That was when Fisher was like, this is what the state wants. And she was like, well, then why are we here?
yeah, and she said, although I don't agree, she said, I'm going to vote in that direction because that's what we're expected to do.
Things like the agenda are dictated by Dr. Adamowski when he doesn't have the authority to do that. He told us to use money follows the child method of funding for our schools, and the legislature of Connecticut, they turned that idea down in 2010, but he's brought it in and did it anyway. And Dr. Fisher said it makes sense if you think about it, and I've given many examples of why it doesn't make sense, and they're not interested in hearing that.
Do you want to go into that?
Sure. Wait, of the reason why money?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, when you say money follows the child, it can become a discriminatory method of funding because not all kids are the same. Not all kids take the same amount of money to educate. My son, he's in FLES, which is a first language, English second, I believe. So he doesn't always get the Spanish like other kids do in Jennings, where they have 1 week Spanish, 1 week English. He may take a certain amount of money to teach. My daughter, she's in both Spanish and English, or she was, you could say, until she went to 6th grade, and she was excelling. She would get great grades on everything and huge numbers on standardized tests, and she became identified as gifted. So I really didn't take as much money to teach her because she was always got it. She's ahead. She's like, give me some extra work on the side while everybody else is doing stuff. And then there's the kids that need help. They need English language learning, like an instructor for that, tutor for that, to learn English. They need remedial help to catch up with the rest of the kids. That takes a lot more money to service that one child.
Right.
If you say that every single kid takes the same amount of money, and if that kid moves, that money goes with them. Say this one school has these wonderful standardized test scores, everybody wants to get in there, kids flock to that school, 50 kids leave a school. Like for the Renzulli thing, they were going to take 50 kids. If 50 kids come out of those 2 grades, that's 50 times for the elementary school, 50 times 6,500 that you just took out of those school budgets, just gutted and sent it over here.
And not just that, but you took out the students that need less to teach.
Right. You took those students that need less to teach and sent them with more money than they actually need. And so the kids that need more money, they lose out because that funding isn't there anymore.
And I know from experience, my own bit of inspiration in Board of Ed budgeting is that special education and special needs are very volatile. You can have one student move into the district and it can be a $70,000 line item in or out if this is someone who has severe physical disabilities or behavioral needs that they need a one-on-one. And so in that case, it really makes it difficult. We're at about the halfway point, so I think as soon as you all are ready, we'll take a quick break for the community calendar, and then when we come back, we'll talk more about issues, and also you out there who are watching can think of questions to call in. Welcome back to Thinking Green. I'm here with Jason Morris and Mirna Martinez, and we're talking education. And anyone who wants to call in with a question is welcome to, but if you don't call, we'll just keep talking. I guess one of the things that I've heard that's an issue, that students in more challenged school districts tend to have teachers who are less experienced teachers. Is that situation getting better or worse? And, you know, where can we go from here?
Absolutely worse right now, and it's unfortunate because even though we're an urban district, I moved here out of choice. I wasn't born and raised here. I came here when it was time to, and I wanted to buy a house and have kids. And it's a culturally rich but small enough place where you know people, and I was really impressed in the schools. I started teaching at Benny Dover when I first moved here, and I was really impressed in Benny Dover meeting fellow, actually the meeting that that I was, my interview before I came in, I was actually kind of tricked into this interview, and it was perfect though. The principal at the time told me, Mr. Foy, told me to just come in and meet some people because he had been trying to get me to come in and interview, and he said, oh, I know you're new to town, why don't you just come in and meet some people, you know, and I said, okay, that makes sense, you know, I'm moving to a new place, and I walked in, and it was a big formal interview table with teachers, parents, administrators, and my spot at the head.
So they were all meeting you too.
A great experience.
It was actually. It was fantastic. So, and I sat down and I told him the truth. I said, you know, we'll go with this, but I want to let you know that I'm not, I did not know this was an interview. I was a little tricked, so I don't have my portfolio on me, but let's go for it, you know. And we had a great conversation. It was really great to speak to, I remember the two teachers that were there. And I liked in the schools knowing that because it is a small enough community, the teachers that I knew, there were plenty of them that lived in town, and I could see, you know, walking on Pequot Avenue for exercise or doing things in town, and I really enjoyed that. It was only like 2 or 3 years in, probably 2 years in there at Benny Dover, I had emergency major surgery, and people came to my house with gifts and get well things, and it's a really nice environment, the possibility of what New London is. And even from then till now, I walked into Benny Dover. So it's only been about 12 years that I've lived here, and I walked into Benny Dover during the back to school kind of or back to school house days about a month ago, and every class that I walked in was a new teacher. But the frightening part is not just where they knew, as in I didn't know them, as it was their first year in Benny Dover, but they were first year new teachers. And sure, there's something to be said about a brand new teacher that has energy and dreams of what they can do, but there's also something to be said about an experienced teacher who's got some strategies down and understands the system in which they're working. And I walked out, and I did see 2 old teachers when I walked out, teachers that I knew, and they told me that they were going back and forth with the numbers. They didn't know if it was 5 or 7, but that 5 or 7 of teachers that were there 2 years prior were still around, so only 5 or 7 teachers. So we've had huge turnovers. I think the numbers that we're hearing are recently 70-something teachers have left in the past. I don't know how many years have you heard?
2 to 3 years. Or...
Yeah. So that's huge turnover. And the talk is that there were exit interviews done.
This time.
But that they don't know yet. They haven't analyzed the information. But I've spoken to many. It's not a big secret. I've spoken to people. I spoke to a couple of people during the the opening at the station. The what was that?
That art opening?
Yeah, I spoke to a couple of people there. I've spoken to people all around, town. I know teachers from having taught in the district, and what I hear, and once again, every school is not the same, but I hear that because we're taking away a teacher's ability to use their art, to think creatively, to think of the unique experience that they have in that classroom that year with that combination of students, with those particular personalities, with what's happening in the world, incorporating that with what's happening personally to that teacher, what they've just learned this past summer, and to take all of those experiences and use that in the context of the curriculum that's mandated, and go with that and have that excitement is being taken away, to be teaching in such a way that's more regimented, more scripted, teaching to the test kind of a thing. And I hear the excuse a lot that it's teachers' pay, and of course, teachers want to, like anyone else, want to have a fair, just pay, but way beyond that is how you feel appreciated and valued, and that you're contributing something. When it's a script, you don't feel that way. You don't feel that you can add what you need to do to understand your individual students and capture what it is that they need captured in order to help them discover their love of those subjects.
Now, Jason, you've probably done some research about Teach for America and that sort of program. So what's happening here, I'm guessing, is happening other places.
Oh,
what's the verdict?
Really, across the nation, that it's been dubbed by parents, by lawyers, by educators, by bloggers, by so many people across the nation as the corporate education reform agenda, where what Teach for America does is they say, okay, we're going to take these Ivy League school people that are getting a bachelor's degree. Okay, you have a bachelor's degree. What is it in? Oh, we don't really care. Are you motivated? Do you feel like do you have leadership qualities? Okay, yeah. Come into our program, become a recruit. We will set you up with a school. We'll give you 5 weeks of education training of how to be a teacher, and then we'll put you in the most struggling districts. You can imagine what that'll do to the average teacher experience in that school. These teachers are coming in there with hardly any real focus on education other than that 5 weeks, and they have grit. The thing is, it's not an attack on those people either. It's really just the organization who is making this happen. They are dwindling the experience in our schools. They're sending them to the most struggling ones that are the focus for so many guinea pig programs. They focus those teachers on standardized tests, and they make them feel like, oh, you're doing something for our country, and you're really going to help us out. And they require them to sign a contract to say you will be a part of this for 2 years. So they'll work in the district for 2 years. A nice little fee from the district goes to this company. Could be anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000 per candidate that they bring in. And then after 2 years, 50% of them are gone. After 3 years, 75%
Are there many who stay in the
gone.
teaching field, or do they mostly
a lot
burn
of
out?
them, a lot of them jump to administrative positions, to government positions, to nonprofits that are funded by Bill Gates, by Eli Broad, by the Walton family, by all these people that are much more interested in the privatization of the curriculum, of the materials, of technology, of even real estate is a big issue with education, and we're going through that right now with Harbor School.
Right.
So you talked about the turnaround, how much, the turnover of how little they tend to stay in a district, and it's dismantling, to think that where we have perhaps the greatest need and putting in new teachers and hoping that because you know, they're new, because they've been to certain schools, although they don't have a background in education, it's dismantling the respect for, I would say, one of the most important jobs that we have to do in our society, to educate our people, you know,
so
our young people.
kind of deprofessionalized.
Yeah,
in the
definitely,
process.
definitely. You know, at Connecticut College, they actually, in NLPA, for New London Parent Advocates, at some point, we were at, it was prior to you, we were at some standstill on a certain topic, and so I went to the college to talk to their Department of Education at the time. The head of the department there, Sandy Grande, she's on sabbatical right now, and just set up a meeting. Could you help us out here and as I was waiting, there were these shirts in the office. There were these red shirts that said, I think they said "Teach for Real," and I inquired to the secretary as I was waiting. I said, "What's that about?" You know, and she said, "Oh, it's a play on Teach for America."
Oh.
They were saying that they're not for it, that they want it to be Teach for Real. They want this to be the real profession, like you said. You know, we've got to take the investing of our children seriously as a big priority. If we invest in our students, there are fewer social costs. There's more tax revenue. There's more volunteering and voting from the population that's able to successfully go through schooling. There's less health costs, less smoking, more exercise. What do we have here? Better recession protection, more benefits, higher pensions, increased learning potential. I mean, it's really hard to quantify, but there have been numbers that have been played for, and
quantified.
Well, they're different, but it's difficult. So there's no one number that you can say is definitely it. You know, it's been done in different ways, and the payoff from this investment is, you know, it's exponential. We really do need to take it seriously and not think that we need people who are dedicated to the development of an educational system, not people who are going to come in and out of our systems, especially where we need this most, in the areas where we have a lot more students struggling.
And you know, my background is early education, but I tell people about this Federal Reserve Vice President, Art Rolnick, who his specialty was economic development, and he came to the conclusion that all of these tax rate rebates and abatements and incentives for economic development never return as much as investment in education.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he got, and he's an economist.
Yep.
So I think the numbers are really there,
Yeah.
that when you do make that investment, I mean, we're so used to wanting the return on our dollar to be next week or next month, and we don't want to look 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years down the road, but you have to take the long view to really make the good investments.
Yeah, yeah.
What I found for the biggest thing to invest, or what we should invest, is our time. Okay, I invest countless hours of time in researching, in advocating, in sharing information online. I've made multiple blog posts on Patch trying to inform the public of what's going on and why you need to become a part of this. Investing in time for me includes getting on this board and setting policy that makes it so we grow our experience in our schools, so that we do empower our teachers and make them feel like they're valued, and that their experience and their certifications and qualifications actually matter. Because right now, the teacher of my son, she has a master's degree. a decade of experience, and here's the classwork that he's done this week, and here's the tests that he's taken, and I'm like, so which of these did you create yourself and didn't come out of a book?
They're not getting any experience.
They're not allowed to do that. They have to use.
We have a phone call. Hi, thanks for calling Thinking Green.
Good evening, and I would have called sooner, but I was a bit intrigued with your show. It's very good.
Thank you.
Very enlightening, and I want to wish the three of you good luck. It'd be nice to go to a Board of Education meeting and hear a nice philosophical discussion like we've heard tonight.
Thank you.
I can't honestly say I agree wholeheartedly with everything, but I got to tell you what, it was very healthy and good, and it was very nice dialogue. I think you've had one of the better education shows I've heard in a long time.
Well, thank you.
One thing I would like to share with you, though, and I don't know if I know money's not everything. However, I know someone recently, actually two people, who applied for jobs in the area. One got a job in Plainfield, one got a job in Norwich. The job in Plainfield paid $12,000 more to start than New London, and the job in Norwich paid $21,000 more to start in Norwich. And the point of this is, for teachers who retire on 70% of their top 3 years, if you're looking at you're in your last 3 or 4 years, and you can add $20,000 or $25,000 to your salary, with all due respect to your devotion to teaching, your retirement may take a little precedent, and you may jump ship to make an extra $25,000 for 3 years, which, if you take a look at that's going to increase their salary by $15,000 a year. It's a lot of money. The teachers have earned it and deserve it. But don't discount the incredible disparity in this region in teacher salaries.
No, I agree with you. I'd like to say something.
Yes, please do. Keep in mind we have about 3 minutes
Okay,
left.
I'd just like to say something. I agree with you. Of course, it's a factor. But I also like to say that, I'm going to give you an example, the Regional Multicultural Magnet School, it's a learned district, and their pay scales are completely different than ours is. At the level that I'm at, I would probably still teaching full-time there. I'm not. I'm just saying that if I were to, would be making about 60% of what I currently make, and their turnover is not high at the magnet school. So just an example as what environment has to do. So, but I do agree. Of course, it is a factor.
Okay, in the last 2 minutes we have, I want to show people the ballot. So anyone who would like to,
Over here.
okay,
Why not over here?
over,
You can show me the back of it, please.
oh, you want to hear?
Yeah.
Okay,
Like that.
okay.
Cool.
Okay. Okay, on this ballot, Mirna and Jason and I are all in weird places in the ballot. Everyone probably knows I am running not for Board of Ed, but for City Council. I am on line C, 1C, the green line. Mirna is on 10C, also the green line, third line down. And Jason is, what are you?
8D.
8D, fourth line down.
I'm also up on the Republican.
Yes, and Mirna's name is up twice. It'll work if you vote for her twice, except that she'll still just get one vote. So if you're a Republican, you might want to vote for her on the Republican line. Since she is a green, unless you have a preference, it would be great to vote for her on the green line. But I want people to also be aware there are 2 referendum questions about the budget. This is a question whether or not to approve the budget from 2012, the year that was closed out on June 30th. No one knows what will happen if the budget fails, and this past year's budget didn't go below budget. My fear is, the worst thing I can see happening to a city is that we spend a lot of money on lawyers figuring these things out. So that is the ballot. You can see the ballot online at the Secretary of State's website. If you do a search on 2013 town ballots and go to New London. Okay, we have 1 minute left. Thank you, Mirna. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Rhonda.
You don't have time to make closing remarks, sorry, but I just want to mention to the viewers, when you're voting, look at the entire ballot. Please, in spite of what you hear, don't just vote for people because of where their name is located. Find out as much as you can about the candidates. There are profiles on the Day website that include videos. There are forums that were videotaped that are being shown on Metrocast on Channel 22. Get as informed as you can before you vote. And you can look at sample ballots in the City Hall as well. So that's all for this week. Good luck to you two.
Thank
Next
you.
week,
Good
our
luck to
guest
you.
will be Luther Weeks from Connecticut Voters Count, and he's going to talk about how the election went from an election security point of view. So good luck, and we'll see you all at the polls on Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah.